What's today's topic, Odie?
Well, today's topic is, getting fired, how to navigate, getting fired from a tech job. Um, Firings from uh, layoffs from tech companies used to be unheard of, but yeah, 2023, um, not even 2023, even the end of 2022 saw a change or a shift in that perception. I think it started with Tesla um, and a few other companies before it started to really. I think Tesla and Facebook were the first companies to start, and now every other person is affected. Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Yeah, not good.
Okay. Fired is such a harsh word, right? Are you really fired when there's several other people that are leaving the same day, exiting the company? Is that really fired or is it laid off? Right? Is it really like they don't want to pay for your performance, or is it the the department has to choose? They have to trim 10% because it was handed down from up high, and you were selected.
Um, to be honest, the lines are very, very blurred. I think being fired versus being laid off versus even resigning, I think it's all a matter of perspective. I think if you're high enough in a company, you can never get fired, but they will just ask you to resign, to step down from your role, right? It's almost like a sign of respect, if you will. Um, and the same thing too happens to layoffs as well. I think, um, I think most people will say, I think laid off is a good, um, is the proper term, but the truth of the matter is that you might as well be fired as well, right? So there are two aspects of this. One is there could be a directive from management saying we don't want we want to reduce our headcount. But at the end of the day, right, there is still uh, some kind of weight or ranking that goes on in the company that they used to decide who gets to stay and who gets to go. And at the end of the day, you are giving a letter terminating your contract or your employment, and as a means of saying sorry because it wasn't their fault, they give you extra bonuses or stuff like that. I think that's how I like to see it. Um, but why I said it's mostly subjective is that none of the things I mentioned, right, are specific to being laid off or being fired. Some companies, even if they fire you, will still do the things as though you were laid off. They could even have, um, yeah, I think if you are the receiving end of it, right, it feels like you're being fired. And if you are on the side of the company, right, the company will say, oh, um, we laid off so staff. But the reality is that it doesn't. The reality is that the two of them are not different, right? The outcome is exactly the same, whether you are laid off or you're fired. So that's what I think
Yeah.
anyway.
At the end of the day, the decision was made that they don't need you.
Exactly. Exactly.
If you were, I'm not sure what the popular term is, if you were indispensable, you would still be there.
Exactly.
All right.
It's true.
And if you were indispensable and they still couldn't have you, then the business would not be there. Like, or at least the department that you're in if you're enterprising. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And this is not to rag on people who got let go or got fired or whatever, because the truth of the matter is that you know it sucks. Like, it really, really sucks if you've been let go of a job, because more often than not, you are probably doing the best of your ability, doing things the right way. Um, but at the end of the day, it's what people perceive of your input, right? How they perceive your input, or how the company sees itself and sees you, it sees itself with respect to you, and yeah, sometimes you may even it may even just boil down to, oh, we know that we have 10 developers and they are all very good, but we believe that um, these XYZ persons have a better future in the company over the, the rest of the developers. It doesn't mean that they are bad developers or they weren't useful or anything like that, but it's just subjective and based on perception. It's not like an AI looked at everybody's characteristics objectively and decided that, okay, this is the optimal employees that need to remain in the company, for the company to, and the company now made the decision based on the AI. It's still based on human feelings. It's still based on subjective assessments and subjective understanding. I had a friend who he was he's at one of the big companies, and he was doing his what do they call it, performance review or something like that, and he rated himself higher than he rated every other person. And his boss now called him during one of their one-on-ones and was now asking him, why did you rate every other person in the team below you? Are you saying that you're better than everybody in the team and stuff like that? And he was now trying to explain that, you know that he feels that he got this particular rating based on his own input, which obviously makes sense to him. He knows exactly what he's doing, the outcome, and all of that stuff. But he doesn't really know what other people are doing to a certain degree. So his rating of them is based on how he sees the work they do. But I bet you that if they asked each of his other team members the same question, right, they would say the exact same thing. So there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into it at the end of the day. So it's not, yeah, you can't use the fact that you are laid off as a statement of fact that you weren't valuable to the company. Sometimes, like in the case of Tesla, sorry, in the case of Twitter, where Elon Musk fired a few of the engineers and then realized that he needed them. I had to call them back. So that's a good example of a situation of, you somebody can be fired even if they are indispensable, because at the time the firing was done, the perception of what that person does was lowered, something like that.
Mm, okay. So what happens now when someone gets laid off?
Man, uh
Like what and that's probably a loaded question, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like what's the emotional or psychological impact? How do you manage that? I guess we could start with that.
Yeah, honestly, the I think the best thing someone can do in that moment is to look forward, right? Don't dwell on the past. Don't
Is look for work?
look forward, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look forward. Like, don't dwell on the past. Don't dwell on the situation, right? Because more often than not, um, mo- more often than not, right? Your The last thing you want to do is often the solution to your problem. So, for example, if you're running temperature, the last thing you want is for anything cold to touch you, like water or anything like that. But that's precisely what is going to, reduce your temperature, right? If you fall sick. So it's kind of the same thing as well. When you get laid off, the last thing you want to do, right, is to just move on as though your life as though nothing happened. You have the temptation to dwell on the past. How did it happen? What happened to me? What was my fault? How it's was it this person that spoke to me, or maybe my boss was didn't fight for me, or blah 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 blah. Understand that what's done is done, and in that moment, the best thing you can do is to move forward and take it from me. Technically, I haven't been fired before, right? I think the closest I got to that was I resigned without any plan, because the company at the time came up with one crazy legal document that they wanted us to sign, saying that um, we should sign off all our intellectual rights to the company, and that if we whatever tools we used while building the company software, we are barred from using those tools to build anything for any other person. So if I use an open source project to work on a web application, I can't use the same open source project to work for a different company. One very nasty legal nonsense. Um, I remember at the time the developers that brought me into the company left because of it. So by the time they gave me the document and I read it, I was like, I'm probably crazy. I gave it to my dad. He read it. He was like, "What the hell is this?" We gave it to a lawyer. Lawyer read it. Lawyer was like, "Yeah, this doesn't make sense." So I quit that job. And the thing that happened to me was after that, I had nothing. Um, I didn't have anything I was doing. I was just home all the time. I tried to apply for jobs. I wasn't getting anything, and I started mulling and regretting that, oh, if I had known, I should have still tried to play politics and see if I could stay longer in the company and all those kind of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, that all what's done is done, right? It doesn't benefit you from, like, constantly trying to retrospectively trying to figure out what happened doesn't help you. So the best thing to do is, what I would suggest is press all the buttons, right? Pressing all the buttons here means apply where you need to apply, reach out on Twitter. Twitter is a really good place, especially if you're part of a community, right? It's a really good place to get connections. In fact, there was even a time I applied to different companies, and some of the engineers at the company who were reviewing my resume knew me on Twitter, right? So I think that is very, very useful, because if you could be the most epic software engineer, but if you don't have someone to connect you to the jobs you're looking for, like if there is no connection, then it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to know that you're this epic engineer who is sitting at home with all the skills in the world, right? You need to have people skills. You need to attend conferences, attend meetups, right? Those are how you improve your chances of getting jobs. Because as much as there's a lot of firing going on, software engineering is still a very, very valuable um, uh, it's still a very valuable skill, and there are still companies that are hiring even in this downturn. So that's something to consider as well. And I think the my last advice is to, should I say, lower your standards now. Um, but if you're looking for a job, right, you it doesn't have to be, especially if you are let go from um, whether Amazon, Google, Facebook, or wherever, right? There's a likelihood that you will feel there's a likelihood that you will feel like you still need to be in those companies, right? You still need to apply for the big names. Okay, I was fired from Google, let me go to Airbnb, or I was fired from this, I want to go to another big company. Realize that there are smaller companies, quote unquote, that are probably just as rewarding monetarily as the big companies, and they have better work-life balance and all that kind of stuff. In fact, one of the best companies I worked for, Theorem, right? It wasn't really a big company like that, but the experience working there was exceptional, right? So yeah, those kind of companies are the kind of companies you should be looking at and applying for. So that's what I think anyway.
Interesting. So when someone gets laid off and they reach out to whoever, like, how should that be done? Should it be, hey, I just got laid off, y'all. Um, Please retweet this so that someone can give me a job.
Well, I would say yes, But the problem with that is that it doesn't scale, right? So only, at least from the way I've seen it, right, very few people have done it and it worked out well for them. But for the most part, I don't think people use that avenue. I still think it's viable. It's still viable in 2023, but there's a good chance that, in the future it won't be as viable once it starts getting annoying, once everybody starts to do something like that. So I think a better approach there may be to privately reach out to people you know personally, right? Or relationships you have on Twitter. You could just send someone a DM and say, hey, I know you are very popular in the community. I'm looking for um, an F sharp job. If you know anybody that is looking to hire an F sharp developer, for example, I think that's a good way to go about it, because it it's more it's more powerful when it comes with a personal recommendation, as opposed to being something that was just going on Twitter as a meme and being retweeted. You know.
Mm. So I have issue with people that do this.
Okay.
Right. So on LinkedIn, it's, oh, I just got laid off. Woe is me. Um, can someone please retweet this? I'm looking for my next job. You don't see an issue with that?
Oh, I do see an. So here's the thing. I do see an issue with it, but at the same time, I also see how effective it can be, right? So, for example, begging on the street, hold on, begging on the street is effective, but it's not necessarily a good strategy, right, for making money. Um, does that make sense? So,
It's analogous to a waiter or waitress.
something like
You,
that, yeah.
you're trying to encourage people to feel sorry for you so that you can make ends meet.
Mm,
And I don't think that that's a productive strategy. So instead, you say, look, I want to preface this with a mentality that I developed probably for the past decade of looking at each event as a personal opportunity.
mm,
Okay. Conversion, right?
okay.
So, whatever event occurs in which it is nothing but a historical event, this pretty woman just walked past the street and just, crossed my path. Well, that's an event. How can I convert that into an opportunity,
Mm,
right? Or, I don't know. I see someone reading a book at the cafe, and I'm not used to people reading books at cafes. I'm used to them staring at their phone. Well, maybe I should figure out what that person is reading and introduce myself, and maybe that could provide another opportunity to network, right? Anyways, conversion, convert events to opportunities. With that said, um, instead of blasting a tweet and hoping that it goes viral for people to have pity on you
mm.
because you lost your job. Woe is me. Um, I think that it would be more effective and it would show strength if you say, hey, y'all, I have an amazing opportunity. I am now available to help other organizations build XYZ. This is the experience that I've demonstrated with other organizations in which I've helped them do this, that, and the other. And I'm now available to help your organization as well. The way, of course, it could be framed in a better way. I'm not a marketer, but when you are able to share that you are an authority and you are now available to help others versus you are a slave to some slave master owner and they just let you go and you need another slave master. Like I don't like that.
I get it, but so here's what so first of all, I would disagree in the sense that you said it wasn't that strategy isn't productive. I disagree. I think that strategy is very productive, right? I don't fully agree with it, but at the same time, you have to weigh that decision versus the desperation that comes from I just got, you know, let go of my job, right? Because truth of the matter is that getting a job, right, you just need one opportunity to work out. You're not trying to get all the jobs. So most people, a effective strategy, right, again, take that with a grain of salt, but an effective strategy is to blast that information as far out as you can, right? Ask for as ask through as many channels as you can for help. um but yeah, so the argument I would make is that this your strategy only works if you're a senior developer and above, right? If you're someone who has a lot of experience already and your resume speaks for itself, and you know you're already among the top echelons of, whatever space you're in. So for example, because I imagine that what you said would actually apply to someone like me, for example, right? Being that, okay, I've done a lot of F sharp. I'm even known in the F sharp community to some extent and stuff like that. So it will definitely work out for me. But if you're a junior developer who maybe has just done an internship at Google, you've done maybe a year or two, and now you're let go, right? That stance isn't going to favor you as much. It's not going to be effective, right? Um, so the approach of going through, I was just let go of Google. I've been working at Google for the past 2 years, blah blah blah. I think that approach is effective. Like it's effective in actually solving the problem, because I'm looking at it from the perspective of I just let go and I need another job ASAP, right? What's the fastest means of getting there? But the fastest means of getting there may not necessarily be the best outcome long term. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's how I kind of see, because you have to remember.
The way that someone's positioning themselves, I don't think it's conducive to negotiating a healthy compensation package,
Yeah.
right? When you're communicating, woe is me, feel sorry for me, someone do charity work for me so I could get some money in my pocket. It and maybe that's not the priority. Maybe someone just needs to get a job, right?
Mhm.
Um, I would think that you would have a better opportunity to negotiate your compensation package when you're not relying on pity, but you're relying on strength. You're saying, this is an amazing opportunity. I am now available. Here are my credentials, and this is how I've helped other organizations reduce expenses and increase profit.
I- Again, I get you, and you're
Yeah.
absolutely right about that. But it reminds me of something I think 50 said. He said, "Not all money is smart money, right? Or not all money is good money." So yes, you may go through the PT route and get a job, but first of all, the money they pay you for that job may not be worth it. And secondly, you may enter into this zone. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a very, very interesting idea that sometimes mediocre is worse than bad, right? Because if you are in a bad situation, there is there is what's the right word? If you're in a bad situation, there is incentive to change it to a good situation. But if you are in this, Goldilocks zone, that is neither bad nor good, right? There is not enough motivation to change, but at the same time, you are not thriving. You're miserable. So there's a good chance that if you follow this strategy I just talked about of going on Twitter and asking "Woe is me," blah blah blah, that you get into those jobs that are just good enough that you can take care of your bills, but not good enough that you are, thriving in the job. You are enjoying what you do. So there is some danger in that, in the sense that you might actually be better off, you know, not having a job and looking for a good job, as opposed to getting a mediocre job and not even having time to apply to get a good job. You know?
All right, segue.
Yeah.
So you've been laid off.
Okay.
how you're going to be spending your time.
Do you want my advice to people or do you want what I would do?
Yes,
Which one is it? What I would do?
it's both.
Both. Okay. So what I would advise people.
Let's start with you.
Okay. What I would do. Uh honestly, two things. One is I would apply to as many jobs as I can. Um, that's what I would do. Secondly, is that I will reach out to contacts that I have, right? People like you, people like my friends in the industry and stuff like that. Friendships I've made on Twitter, connections I've made. I would reach out to them and say, hey, your boy is kind of free right now, so what's up? Um, then, so that I would do. That's the baseline. But I would spend 99% of my time on my side project, right? I'm just going to just keep working at it, sharpening my. So it does two things. One is that it keeps my skills sharp, and secondly, I am building something productive, right? So my time is going into something that is going to yield fruit eventually. That would be my plan. And finally, I think I would essentially just focus on, my YouTube channel, make more video tutorials, write more blog posts, stuff like that. The more I do these things, the more visible I get, right? Because, um, yeah, that's just the way it is. And if it's even possible, if my YouTube channel is big enough that I have a good enough audience where the income I'm getting from that is enough to take care of my daily needs, I may just even cut applying at that point. I may just stop right there, and yeah, not have to work for anyone anymore,
So,
which is both terrifying and liberating at the same time.
so wouldn't you prescribe the same course of action to other people that you would basically prescribe to yourself?
Excellent question. Now, I'm going to come off as egotistical right now, but
Okay.
I feel like I have earned it, right? First of all, most people are not like me, right? I have met so many, so you have to have, you have to, there are many strengths that I have that don't necessarily apply to most people, right? Being very, very good at coding, but still have a good understanding or a good grasp of management and leading teams and all of that. And on top of that, still know how to have like um, you know the other aspects of being entertaining or um, coming up with being good at describing things, discussing things, explaining things. There are so many developers I know who are excellent at coding but can never explain themselves to save their lives, you know so asking such a person to start a YouTube channel right doesn't isn't going to help that person. So those are the that's
I think it will.
really, because
Yeah.
I really doubt that. There are people that are even camera shy as well, right? So
Yeah.
there are,
You
yeah,
were never camera. You were never camera shy.
no, funny enough.
No. You were never a bad coder. You never struggled to articulate your ideas to peers and seniors.
Never. So
Okay. Well,
I'll give you
I started
okay.
I started as a beginner in everything,
Oh wow.
and the reason where I'm at for better or for worse is because I decided to target what I wanted to be, and I kept on doing what those type of people do until I finally became it.
Mm,
And so when if we go back to getting laid off and what's the course of action now, I would say pretty much what you said, but I would say yeah, work on yourself and document how you're improving yourself for the next organization that you're going to help, right? And you'll notice that I keep using the word help and serve.
mhm,
I'm not using the mentality of I'm an employee, I'm a subordinate, and I need a slave master. No, it's I'm a partner. This is my skill set. I know how to automate the reduction of costs and how to increase expenses programmatically,
Mm.
right? And that is my strength, that is my practice, and that's where I'm honing my skills at to continuously improve. Make a long story short, yeah, I would say just like my mentors would read the newspaper every morning, read Stack Overflow every morning. Pick your topics or your tags, and every morning look at what the questions are and look at what some of the answers are. And periodically, you can sprinkle your own answers because some things you've actually ran into.
Mm.
And I would say maybe not necessarily have a YouTube channel, but definitely in parallel to you maintaining your quota of applying for jobs, I would say maintain a daily regiment, even if it's a 1 hour quota in the morning or in the evening or both, to work on some type of side project. And when you unlock an achievement within that side project,
Mhm.
share that with people. Share it on LinkedIn, share it on Twitter, right? Make sure you include the tags Azure or the tag, I don't know, whatever technology or whatever ideology that's relevant.
Mhm.
Because then you're building up momentum, and I think that I know I said a lot. At the end of the day, especially when we have massive layoffs across multiple spaces and industries, you can't be mainstream if you're competing with 10,000 people from FANG companies.
Mm.
You have to demonstrate that you're an outlier or at least provide an illusion that you are.
Mm. That's well spoken. But the prob hmm, the argument I would make there is w what the HR departments and of most companies care about isn't necessarily what the technical teams care about.
Yep.
And the truth of the matter is that there is that gap. You have to be attractive to HR departments to even get your foot in the door before your technical abilities become um, um, enticing, right? Before you get to show your Stack Overflow profile to the developers there, and then they get, oh, this guy, he's good, or whatever the case may be, because 99% of the time, all they care about is what's on your resume, or oh, we've seen you on LinkedIn, or they will even just search for your name, right? And they're looking for something. So I will agree with you that yeah, you know, you need to publish your achievements and stuff like that, but I don't think doing it through Stack Overflow really makes that much sense. Personally, I would say a better approach would be to write articles, right? So write as many articles as you can, publish it on Medium or something like that, because the moment the HR companies search for your name, right? Those are the kind of things that should come up. Things related
Your
to,
your name is going to show up on Stack Overflow. If you Google my name, it does, right?
yeah, true, true, but
The whole what we're
yeah,
both talking about is building a professional web footprint so that when people
correct,
Google your name, they
correct.
don't see you at parties, link after link on the first page. They see the first page, or at least three-quarters of that page, your professional practice, that you
Mm,
actually are invested in what you say you're going to help this organization with.
mm,
So,
mm. I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that digital footprint is super important, almost to the point where if they Google your name and nothing shows up, it's almost like you don't exist, right? Um,
and people disagree with me on this because I'm like, so like when I'm put in a position to interview,
mhm,
yeah, I'm like, well, let me Google this person's name. I see nothing about this person that conveys that they work in tech.
mm,
Why am I going to give this person my time? And 99.9% of people disagree with that mentality.
hmm,
And I think I can understand why. You have people that they they prefer not to disclose any of their life on the World Wide Web. And I get that. But there's consequences to this, right? If I get hurt and I Google someone's name because they said they're a good lawyer, quote unquote good lawyer, got to Google him or
Mm,
her. They have to show up, and I have to see hit after hit after hit after hit of not them playing golf, but them having something linked to their professional practice in
mm.
order for me to have confidence. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with someone that's applying for a job or that's being prepared to be vetted through an interview. It's like if I Google your name and I see absolutely nothing about how you earn your living, in which the majority of your time is earning a living, like why do we even need to talk?
Mm.
What what is the probability that you're going to be able to teach me something at our interview that I'm going to say, wow, this person can really contribute to the team that we're trying to build or maintain.
Yeah,
Like
but there are people like that though, right? There are
there
people,
are,
yeah, there are people like that that
but
are
what's the
very good.
probability?
True, true. Yeah, so it reminds me of a conversation that was brought up recently about how companies are looking at people's GitHub activity blocks, right? And
Yeah,
using
if it's
that,
public,
yeah, yeah, it's public, but they use that to see if someone is a good developer or something like that. So it still
the
goes
majority
back
of my
to
stuff is private. But yeah,
no, no, no. Even if it's so, the way GitHub does it is even if it's even if you work on private projects, the activity on those private projects will still show up on your profile.
okay.
Yeah, so because of it, there are a lot of recruiters who use that as some kind of yardstick to say, oh, okay, this guy is a very uh what's the word? This guy is a very active developer as opposed to um oh, we've never seen this resume before, stuff like that. And personally, I think it's a bad thing. And the reason why it's a bad thing is that, like I said, I know a lot of developers who probably don't even use GitHub. They use maybe Azure DevOps, or they have their own private GitHub Git repository using what's this other platform that is rivaling GitHub? What's the name?
No,
Damn,
it doesn't matter.
it was in
Doesn't
my.
matter.
It doesn't matter anyway. But that platform allows you to like host your own private repository. And there are a lot of people that are just so paranoid of GitHub that they prefer to have their own private repository um, where they where they put their code, and they don't want to put it on GitHub and stuff like that. So there's that. But there's also GitLab. I remember it's GitLab. The Another thing too that I also wanted to bring up as well is having a personal project. I think that is also very very important if you've been laid off, right? Because like I said, it not only allows you to sharpen your skills and make sure that your skills are sharp and all of that kind of stuff. But it also broadens your knowledge because now you're not just responsible for writing the code, right? You're responsible for every other thing outside of it, and being able to demonstrate that to a potential employer, especially if the potential employer is doing something along the lines of what your project is doing. I think that's a very, very powerful way to stand out from every other person who just wants to get a tech job.
Makes sense.
Mm.
Oh, is there any other bullet we should cover before we conclude?
Well, no, no other bullet. I think it sucks to be let go, but it's not the end of the world, right? There's still so many buttons you can press. There are still so many levers you can pull. Um, and yeah, again, one thing to remember once you are applying to different companies is that you don't need all of them to work out. You just want one to work out, right? So I had a friend. I think I'll wrap up with this story. But I had a friend who was so good at passing interviews, right? Because he was absolutely fearless. He would apply for he was an intern at my former company, and he would apply for junior developer role, mid-level developer role, senior developer role, program
Technical
ma-
fellow.
oh my God. Like, and he was so fearless that rejection was nothing to him, right? So if he could he could do 4 or 5 different interviews and get rejected and not even feel a thing. Like, he was that immune to it. And what I noticed happened to him, because me, considering that, okay, I like to be this technical person and all those kind of stuff. Um I like to show how much I know, which is not necessarily a good thing sometimes. But um I hate it. I hate being rejected for any kind of interview. Like, I like the idea that if you and I sit down and we talk, right, there's a very good chance that I will get the job, right? So because I don't want to mess up my record, quote unquote, right? I'm very, very adverse to applying for jobs. But this, my friend, man, he would apply regardless. And what he told me that blew my mind was, after enough times of being rejected over and over again, he started to pick up on subtle cues during the interviews, right? Because people who organize interviews, guess what? They copy from other people as well. So there's a good chance that if he gets rejected at, say, a Facebook, right? There's a good chance that those set of questions, or the interview style, or the materials he needed to read, or whatever the case may be, applies one to one to another company like that, right? So it got to a point where, even down to the technical questions that he was asked, right, he had this vault, quote unquote, of all the interview questions he had answered in the past, even the ones he didn't get. He would go back after the interview and still solve them and put it in this his vault. So it was so bad that he got to a point where, when a new company reaches out to him and says, "Hey, we have this opportunity, come and take this lead code question," the moment he sees the question, he can just go to the vault and just see that, oh, this is just a transposition of one other question I was asked, and this was how he solved it, and this was the answer, and he'll just copy and paste and do it. Now, he was the one that answered those questions by himself, but it goes to show you that, there is a there is a limit to how much people think that they can fail infinitely, but it's not true. There's a limit to how much you can fail before you start succeeding, right? So
Mm.
that's something that, if you've been laid off, is something to quickly remember, that apply as much as you can. Even if you keep failing interviews, it doesn't matter, because, like I said, there's a limit to how much failure before you start to succeed. And secondly, you don't need all of them to work out. You just need one to work out, right? That, my friend I told you about, he is in one of the big companies now. So yes, we got into FANG companies using different roads, but the outcome is the same as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind.
Uh, I guess my closing note, especially with the context being getting laid off in 2023. Now what?
Mm.
I think it's absolutely important. It's freaking vital that you you look up to the heavens and you just rub your chin like this and say, "What would Scott Nimrod do?" And that's it.
Mm. Nice, nice.
Call to action is I checked last week and we had like 5 subscribers.
Mm.
Woohoo!
Okay.
Um, if you found that this discussion was worthy of a like, then please like it. If uh, if you don't like me, tell me in the comments why you think I should improve on certain areas of my personality or my ego, whatever. And if you want Odie and I to continue and be consistent each week, then let us know in the comments and also subscribe to try to boost the motivation for us to continue or be consistent. So, anything else with you?
That's it, man.
All right. Hey, good stuff.